Hey garden friends, today we are going to talk about we're going to stop buying plants and we're going to work with what we already have. And while we're talking about that, I'm going to take cuttings from this dahlia. That is working with what I already have rather than buying more. So have you ever come home with a carload of plants and had no idea where you were going to put them? You are not alone. I've been there, done that a few times, and yeah, so it is something that happens. Sometimes the best thing you can do for your garden is to stop buying new plants. This is not forever. This doesn't mean never again, but long enough to understand what you may really need in your garden. So I'm going to take a cutting. Here, I have a whole video on taking dahlia cuttings. It's an older one. I will try to remember to link it. If not, remind me if I don't. And then I'll make sure to get that there. I'm going to work on this. I may comment a time or two on it, but this isn't really a how-to on taking cuttings. So this is my David Howard dahlia. It is an orange dahlia. I've never liked orange in the garden, but this came in one of those combo packs, and I thought, I'll plant it, see what it's like. I loved it. This is what made me like orange in the garden. And now I love orange in the garden. So yeah, this one is sprouting. It's been here in the greenhouse in the winter. And yeah, I can take cuttings from it because it had 8. I've already done 2. And I want more of this particular dahlia. I know I have another container. And also I have some I have to repot. See, this one got smashed by the tree. It was out on the porch of the greenhouse. And when the greenhouse got smashed, or the porch got smashed, so did a couple of my dahlia plants. So, in the last video, we talked about how a boring garden could be the best garden you've ever grown. And how gardening's kind of become loud with marketing and particular plants that you supposedly need for a beautiful garden or will do better for you. And it's gotten expensive. So let's backtrack away from that. And we talked about how a slower, more intentional garden can be the most peaceful garden you can have. And I'm aiming for lower maintenance. And I need to lean into things that I know work. And that isn't always a new plant. So really this video is the next step in that idea of slowing down and growing a more peaceful garden. So we want to add more peace to our garden. Sometimes that means to stop constantly adding more to it. It means relying on the tried and true that we have already in our gardens and that we could either collect seeds from, take cuttings from, and propagate. This, I have, like I said, 2 of these dahlias in containers, and I can end up with several more and grow a big patch of them. And sometimes a big patch of one plant that way can really be a showstopper. Dahlias for me have been fairly easy now that I know how to keep the gophers from eating them. I just have to make sure I provide support for them because they do tend to get floppy. We have the sun in our garden goes behind trees when we get closer to fall, and then everything starts leaning, all the plants, in that direction. So without support, it kind of looks like the crooked garden. Anyways, so I'm going to take a cutting here. I have a sharp knife. This is just a kitchen knife, but it's sharp. And I found a tuber that's away from, or not a tuber, a sprout that is away from the others. And I'm going to go down there and kind of cut close to the tuber. And there we have it. Now these lower leaves, where they were coming up, I'll cut those off. Now some will say that to have a piece of the mother tuber helps. I'm not sure that's accurate. I do know that the leaf nodes under the soil do help. I've done both ways. And these are called tip cuttings. And I'm hoping I can keep these in here. I might have to take them in because it's been getting super hot out here. I was in the greenhouse. I was trying to get out here this morning before it got too sunny on here. I'm going to go ahead and chop some of that off because I want the leaves to be under the soil. The leaf nodes. And then I just pop it into this 6-pack I have, a used 6-pack I'm reusing, recycling, and I have some potting soil in it, and I'm just popping them down into it. And I need to put it in a container with water to soak up water because this soil is pretty dry. I have one here I can use. Now there is something I want to say that's kind of off topic. I sometimes get people that comment or chime in and they are really bugged by how things are pronounced. I've mentioned this before, but it's been a while, so it bears repeating. And if you know what I'm talking about when I talk about a plant, like with dahlias, people pronounce it dahlias, dahlias, all kinds of ways. I've heard it like 5 different ways pronounced, but I always know what people are talking about. And I'm not going to go on and tell them, oh no, it's pronounced dahlias or dahlias or dahlias. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't. And I was watching a British garden show on clematis. They pronounced it clematis, 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 clematis. It was unreal, all the different ways that people pronounced it. But we all knew what they were talking about, and that is what is more important. So if you're really hung up on pronunciation of plant, like between rhizomes and rhizomes, if I say rhizome, you know what I'm talking about, right? So same with zinnias or zinnias. I'm going to pronounce it how I've always pronounced it. And if you don't like that, I'm very sorry, but I'm not changing for you. So let's get past those things because you know what? They are so unimportant in the scheme of things. Really, that's what you're going to get uptight about. Yeah, I'm very more laid back. I don't care how people pronounce things as long as I know what they're talking about. So anyways, I thought I needed to address that. And I'm pretty snarky. I get it. And with things like that are petty, I'm not going to worry about it. Okay, so I'm looking around here at this plant. So why do we keep buying plants? I know why I do. It feels good. I get a rush. I can see where people can be addicted to shopping because if you get that rush, it does. It makes you feel good. And I am that way with plants. And this year I've really kind of made a pact with myself as far as not buying plants just because I think they're interesting or I just would like to try them. Last video I did, or one of the last recent ones, was on cosmos and growing cosmos. And at the end of it, I asked you, what would you like to see? Would you like to see a video about growing flowers that are easy maintenance, low water, all of the above, easy to grow, that take the same conditions as cosmos, like a cottage garden grown from seed or plants like that? And everybody was a big fat yes on that. So that's something coming up. My back garden got damaged from a tree falling on it in the last snowstorm. I have to redo a few areas because they got totally obliterated by this 50-foot pine piece that fell on it. And so, yeah, I thought that would be good to follow through on. I'll put the cosmos I start out there and other plants. So I know a lot of people are into easy, low maintenance. And now with drought, a lot of people facing drought, having drought tolerant is an excellent idea too. So buying plants can feel like progress, like you're fixing something, or like you're creating something new. And we buy because something feels unfinished. I've got a spider crawling across my camera. Or, you know, we saw something online and we thought, that happens to me. I think, ooh, that's a really cool plant. There is a couple of perennials I want to try, and they have them at Digging Dog Nursery. But they are an investment because by the time I pay shipping, they're going to be expensive. And so I have to weigh, do I really want to go that route or be content with what I have? So it's got to be something really outstanding, but I've got to know it's going to thrive if I'm going to spend that kind of money, because I am addicted to roses. I just ordered 2 more. These are Japanese roses. They're amazing. They're so different to my mind, and I would like to try them, but they were not cheap. But that was my indulgence right there. You know, there's nothing wrong with now and then, like me with my roses. I know I love roses. I know where these roses are going to go. So that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a general overall feel. Now, I had a few people comment on my boring garden video and how we need to step back from all the marketing. And I had a few people say that this was meant for me. I've spent so much money. I need to get myself under control. But when you're watching all these garden videos, that they're pushing something, whether it's certain plants or certain systems or certain tools, it feels like that's going to fix your problem, or that's going to work for you that way. And so it can be a momentary impulse that has you go ahead and buying like at that time. So before you invest in any more plants, why don't you honestly assess your garden? What's working well for you, thriving for you this year? What didn't work? What can you expect? Like this season for us, this is March and we're having summer weather. Normally we would have snow. I am putting out plants that I normally wouldn't put out this time of year. I'm taking a chance because it could turn winter again, but from the weather predictions, we've got a heat dome over us and it doesn't look like that's going to happen as far as a freeze. But, excuse me, you never know. So I've taken a few cuttings off of here. Maybe I'll take one more. And that will be 4 in total. Anyways, assess your garden. And what areas seem to be the most peaceful? What areas had very little work on your part, but they still looked beautiful? I forgot to take the leaves off. Yeah, those are very important questions to ask. And what really was pleased you? There was certain plants last year for me that when I did one of the assessment, I thought, yeah, those did not need anything from me, but they bloomed all summer long. They're very drought tolerant. And these were the Greggii salvias, and I found several colors that were beautiful. And I bought a few more of those. We'll see how well they overwintered, how well they'll do for me this year. But the one in particular in the front that was a fuchsia pink, it just bloomed from spring all the way till frost. And I did nothing. I did not even have to deadhead it to keep the blooms coming. So that, I thought, I want more of that. And salvia's pretty easy. I do have a video. I think I'll link it. I will link it if I can find it, on taking cuttings from salvias. And then I want more of those. So I'm going to fill up other parts of the garden, and even my secret cottage garden will have it that I'm redoing. Okay, so that one I took plenty of cuttings from. And I'm going to make myself a little tag for that so I don't forget which ones I have. Let me get a pen. So by assessing my garden like that, I found plants I knew I could trust. The same with Jupiter's beard. I have 2, though. I have the white and the red. Jupiter's beard, that blooms all summer long and did beautifully. I know I always will have my irises because they come back and they provide a beautiful spring show, and many other things aren't blooming yet. They are just gorgeous. I love them, even though their bloom time is really on the shorter side. It doesn't matter to me. And when they're done, their spiky leaves provide interest. Okay, I'm going to put orange dahlia. I just put orange and I'll know what it is. I'll put it here and it'll face the direction of the dahlias. Alrighty. So if you already know what you have in your garden that works for you, you're ahead of the game. Remember, your garden is already very generous. The one thing I love most about gardening is plants want to grow. And if you have the right conditions for a particular plant, it will perform for you. It will just keep on giving. And plants, they don't stay the same size. Many times, like some perennials, many perennials, after 3 years, they need to be dug up and divided. That gives you more plants. If it is a perennial that has performed well for you, put it in other parts of your garden where you want that type of low maintenance plant. Many plants will reseed. I have, let's see, what do I have? The Jupiter's beard I mentioned before, that reseeds readily. The verbascum I have reseeds readily. There are poppies, they reseed readily. Larkspur, I have so many things. I have a field of larkspur if I don't mow some down or cut some back. And those are just the flowers that I depend upon to come back each year without me replanting. So if you've got plants like that, instead of asking yourself, what do I need to buy? You ask yourself, what can I use? Or what can I move from another part of the garden? Sorry guys, I had to come out here. The camera kept shutting off in my greenhouse. Now the rose is catching my hair. This is one rose that's going to be moved. It's in a bad spot. So anyways, where were we? We're talking about dividing perennials. I'm looking at my notes here, so just in case you know. So yeah, perennials every 3 years, to keep them healthy, you should divide them. So therefore you have a plant, again, that you could put in other places. And one thing in your garden, that harmony that is created by you putting the same plant in different areas of your garden is really a design win. And it is just something that does create peacefulness and harmony in your garden, as well as you know how well that plant is going to do. Now sometimes moving a plant in an area, maybe it won't do well. You just know it won't work there, then you can move it again. But dividing perennials, it fills empty spaces, repeats color through your garden, and it does strengthen the original plant. So that is a win-win, and you don't have to buy anything. You know, there's something deeply satisfying about growing a garden with plants you already have or plants you've propagated. There is just a deep sense of satisfaction that I can't even explain what there is. And I know I've become quite addicted to propagating plants. I have way too many of certain ones, but it makes me popular with my garden friends because I share. And I'll show a clip I had made this video once and it totally bombed. So I'll show you a clip of some plants that reseeded themselves in a pathway, and I've dug them up some, and I've put them in pots, and they're throughout my gardens. I've decided to spread more throughout my gardens because they are super duper performers, and yeah, they were so easy to dig up. They do go to seed quickly, or not quickly, but readily, and they spread far and wide. But to prevent that, all I have to do is keep up with deadheading if I like. I don't mind them coming up. I'll either pull them out, or when I'm weeding a bed, or if it's in an area that I haven't mulched, I'll make sure to mulch that area if I'm getting too many seedlings to where they become like weeds. But this particular plant, I haven't had a hard time with keeping up with. So there's that. So also moving plants. Our gardens change. The light can change from trees filling in, or trees being taken out, or they fall across your garden and then they're no longer there casting shade. We've had neighbors who've taken trees down that were blocking sun. Now I don't get enough sun. Hopefully the sawing in the background is not bothering you, but I shouldn't say get enough. I fight for sunlight. And so when they had to take the trees down next door, I was thrilled because the way the sun moves in the winter, they go down behind those trees, and now that those trees are gone, I get more sun when I really want more sun, and that is in the winter. So those kind of changing conditions can change where a plant will thrive in your garden. Maybe you had a shady area that's now very sunny, and those shade plants need to be moved, and then you can place sunny plants, that makes sense, in that spot. And that can change up something, the look of the garden, that doesn't need a purchase of a new plant. Or even you could put in a garden feature like a bird bath or something of that nature. So I talked about the one plant that was a volunteer. So you'll get volunteers and seedlings if you plant flowers that readily read the seed themselves. I have a few videos or a couple of videos I know on plants that reseed themselves, even perennials. And sometimes that is really an easy way to go about it. Now, if you want seeds or plants to reseed in an area, of course, you would not put down a thick mulch. The mulch would, of course, prevent them from germinating. But if you do want them to come up, you just pull the mulch away from wherever you want those plants to come up. So you can kind of curate even how things reseed in certain areas if you like. When I first started in this garden, I did not really curate my garden. All I did was get plants from neighbors that did well, came up of their own volition in this neighborhood. And that was rudbeckias, echinaceas, and daisies. I put them along everywhere and let them reseed. The extent of my weeding really was me taking a weed eater in the path that I wanted to walk and weed eating that area down. Everything else was self-sown, and the larkspur too I had here for the blue. And it would come up in big clumps, each plant. So it was a repeat through everything. And that was the extent of my gardening effort because I worked at a very physical job. I would come home tired. I didn't have it in me, even though I loved being out in the garden, to do a lot of work. So that was my first garden, and it was beautiful. I look back at the pictures, and the only downside was many times those plants had a certain bloom window. And when they were done, I didn't really have anything yet to take over. So I had a few weeks of blooms and then nothing. So I made sure I integrated more plants in that took over the bloom, and that's called succession planting, where they would bloom after those were done. So like with my irises now, they come up in early spring and they'll bloom, and then that's warmer climate plants fill in after they're done. So that blooms over, then the roses and other things start to take over. So that is where I integrated more. And now I do have more time in the garden. But I'm leaning back to where I'm not spending as much time in the garden because we may need to travel more, and I don't want to have to worry about, special plantings being neglected or dying on me just because I can't be here to take care of it. And yeah, I do have a watering system that I can put on timers. If that's all I need, that's great. So that may be the route I go. So one thing about flowers that reseed themselves, many times where they come up and thrive is exactly where they need to be. And I learned that myself over the 40 years of gardening. I've been here 30 years. And sometimes I'll put plants in a certain area and they don't thrive, and I'll move them to another and they will. But many times seedlings that come up in the right area, that's when you'll note, hey, those work really well there. And then you can know that plants with the same requirements would go there with them very well. So that's another bonus of plants that reseed themselves. This rose is getting to me. There's a quiet message that's been permeating a lot of the digital gardening world, and we haven't even questioned it. And that is, a good garden is always changing. You're always switching up beds. You're always planting new stuff. You're always expanding your garden and always adding something new. But that's really not how gardens become beautiful. The most beautiful gardens are usually the ones that have been allowed to mature, grow over time, and repeat themselves. It just settles. And if you think about it, that comes from working with what you have rather than feeling you need to complete it with something else, or that you constantly need to be replacing things. When you truly learn your garden and you understand what does well, what returns well, you naturally spend less because you stop guessing, you stop resetting, you stop redoing, and you stop trying to fix things with new purchases. Instead, you start making decisions from your experience. And I will say everyone's experience can be different. I just did a video on cosmos, the 10 things you need to know about cosmos. And a couple people chimed in how they had the lean soil or they had the conditions, but they still didn't bloom. They didn't do this or that. And you know what? Everybody's conditions are different. And some things that will thrive for everyone else won't thrive for you. And that's where the experience comes in, and you learn from that. You think, okay, I may try this plant in another area. It didn't work in this area. And then if it still doesn't work, move on to a different plant. There are so many in this world that will do well for you, and it's kind of a waste of your time and effort and energy to try to get something to grow that really doesn't want to, and spending the money on replacing it again and again. Now, some things are seed grown, like the cosmos. If you can try to grow it from seed, you can afford to experiment, because a package of seeds is probably $3, maybe $4, and you could just experiment. But after a few years, if it's not working, find something that will. And when you have that experience, that's where your confidence comes in. You know, your garden doesn't constantly need to be filled. Sometimes it does need space, a little breathing room, and it definitely needs time. And you know what? Many times, if you've gardened for any amount of time, it already has everything it needs. And when you stop constantly buying, you start to see your garden a little bit different. Not as something lacking, but as something that's quietly abundant. So next time in this boring gardening series, I'm thinking I'm going to address tools and how maybe what you already have is more than enough. And this week, before you go and buy anything, walk through your garden, and you may realize you already have enough. So I hope you enjoyed this second segment of the Boring Garden series, and come on back and I will have more garden fun for you. I need to do another 10 things you need to know. Seems to be people really love that on even the simplest flowers, and so I'm going to do another one of those soon. And we'll be playing around. I'll let you know how the dahlias do that I potted up the cuttings from, and I will also link that video in the description that I do have a better step-by-step. Now these ones, I did not worry about getting a piece of the mother tuber, which in the other video I did say that it's supposed to help. I watched another video of another gal who grows dahlias all the time. She said it wasn't necessary, so this time I didn't, and we will see how they turn out. So I'll see you next time, and get out in your garden and have a great day.